Today I evolved 100 animals to achieve world domination. And within 24 hours I will choose my command. Choose my command. Choose my command. Oh. Crash Bandicoot is an orange rat that breaks boxes and fucks pigs. And if by this point you don't know him, I'm sorry your life is so miserable. Crash is by definition the most mistreated character in video games. No other character has suffered as much from their company. He went from having an excellent trilogy plus a fantastic card game, to a mediocre party game, to being thrown off a cliff. Only to have a legendary resurrection, which will be ruined by another game that almost no one plays. Released in September of '96, Crash was one of the first 3D platform games, being his only true competitor at the time, Super Mario 64, which had been released in June of the same year. The creation of Crash was a true technical marvel, as Naughty Dog had to reinvent how games were developed at the time, thinking of it as a Sonic game viewed from behind. Which is why it was named the Sonic's Ass game. But don't go looking for it like that on Google, because no one knows what horrible things you might find. Not only did they manage to overcome the technical limitations, but also set a trend towards creating more 3D games, as most games still used 2D sprites, and the few 3D games that existed were things like Parappa the Rapper or... God, I swear that game has murderous intentions. And although many people complained at the time that the levels were very simple and linear, Crash's influence on other games is undeniable, such as seeing Donald Duck Quack Attack, Lilo and Stitch, or Croc. And by influence, I mean cheap copies. But none of these games could match the quality and charisma of the rat with big shoes and shorts. Help! Crash hit me and I can't get out! The levels overflow with creativity with their scenarios, creating a story that the game does not directly tell you, since as you progress through the adventure, you can see how islands initially full of animals and vegetation gradually transform into a dark and mechanized place. This is also reflected in the music, which changes from being cheerful and fun to becoming darker and slower. Also, as you progress, you can see how the Nestle factory becomes more and more present. I mean Cortex Castle, whoopsies. Crash Bandicoot 1 is harder because you have to get all the boxes without dying in all the levels if you want to reach 100%. Since a single mistake can cost you the level, making you have to repeat it from the beginning. And in levels like Slippery Climb or Sunset Vista, that's a curse worse than death. That's why many began to call it the Dark Souls of platformers. Although these people were playing the insane version, in which this condition is only present in levels with colored gems, making the rest of the game much easier. However, if you're not so concerned about completing everything, it can be much simpler than other games of the same era. Instead, in Crash 2 and 3, you can die as many times as you want and still get the gem in the level, and therefore get 100%, unless you miss a box or get a game over, in which case... We start the game with Cortex and Brio putting Crash in a machine to brainwash him, since Cortex wants him to be the commander of his army of evolved marsupials, and where he sounds like he needs to stop vaping.
This time I shall reign triumphant!
Are you okay? Don't you want a cough drop? According to the manual, what happens here is that Cortex captures and throws Crash out the window, but I think we all always imagined that Crash was running towards the window to escape, and the Insane Trilogy confirms that theory as they animate it that way. And by the way, have you noticed that Cortex is running in the air in the cinematic?
Get your hand off my penis!
We end up at Insanity Beach, which for me is the normal beach. And from here, we will have to reach Cortex Castle to save Crash's girlfriend, Tana, who, judging by her appearance in the bonus levels, is a blow-up doll or is in the process of rigor mortis. As for the story, there's not much that the game itself tells you, as it is very basic in that aspect, although there's a book called the Crash Bandicoot Files, which is basically a production guide for the game, and has quite a few interesting things, like the fact that Tiny and the Komodo brothers were planned for the first Crash, or that Aku Aku was going to be a witch doctor and not just a mask. It also tells how the N on Cortex's forehead was made by his family, who gave him that N for nerd, a family that was a big group of circus clowns. All of this is very interesting and gives you a good insight into into what the developers were thinking, but this document was basically the planning stage of the game. It's not a story that details the game itself, so it's difficult to know if everything here is still 100% canon, especially because the file refers to Crash Bandicoot as Willy the Wombat, which was his temporary name while they decided on a good one. And interestingly, Cortex was initially supposed to be in love with Tona, but someone from production saw the damage it could cause to the world making Cortex a furry, and decided to change it so Cortex only focuses on world domination. Hey Brio, did you put the frog in the Thothinator? Yes, Dr. Cortex. Perfect. With this machine, we will create an army of super intelligent animals and rule the world. Intelligent? Yeah, don't you remember the purpose of the Thothinator? Yes, it's just that I think I used the wrong machine. Meh, potato. The first level has what can be called the plague of platforms, which is this great bridge. And if you know Crash, you know how infamous this part is, and how many lives it has taken. However, you then realize that it's much easier to walk on the bridge using Aku Aku's triple mask. Speaking of which, we encounter Aku Aku for the first time, who is a mask that helps you in the levels, which according to the manual is the spirit of a witch doctor who, feeling that Crash needs help on his noble adventure, distributes the boxes with his mask across the islands, and the wiki says that he belonged to Papu Papu's tribes, which sounds logical, but I didn't find any source that says that. And I also couldn't find where all the other boxes come from. And if you were a kid when you played this game, his song is implanted in your brain, which when you get him sounds like
What have I got?
And as a child, I didn't know he was called Aku Aku, so I called him by the sound it made. So, from now on, his name is Burdega. Burdega gives you 2 extra hits, which means that you can take damage without dying twice. And if you get a third mask, you become invincible for 20 seconds, where you break boxes, kill enemies, and run way faster. Burdega also serves as a light source in 2 levels, Lights Out and Fumbling in the Dark, or as I like to call them,
No talent, mediocre piece of shit!
where each Burdega gives you some light for a brief time. And if you lose it, well, good luck. Crash can only jump and spin, which makes the gameplay seem simple. But these have a certain learning curve, as jumping is not fixed, but it depends on how much momentum you have and how long you press the X button. And also, if you jump on an enemy or a box, you can bounce higher if you hold down the button, which in some levels is required to complete them. As for the spin, this was designed to make the game a little easier, since if they put a punch or a kick, you will have to very precisely adjust Crash before attacking to be able to hit the enemies. Instead, with the spin, you can attack in all directions at the same time, making it not so easy to miss the hit. Crash is a game of patience. It feels harder than it is because we usually want to go as fast as we can. But at least this Crash is played better if you take everything slowly and analyze the next step before taking it. There are basically 4 types of levels, where you advance forward, sideways, backwards, and the levels where you commit animal cruelty. In some of these levels, you'll need colored gems that are obtained on the last island, as these unlock paths that lead to more boxes within a level. And by the way, the boxes from any bonus do not count towards the tally, so don't kill yourself repeating a level just because you can't pass the Cortex one. Speaking of this, there are only 2 in the game, which unlock 2 other levels. These are in Sunset Vista and Jaws of Darkness, and unlock Whole Hog and
Piece of shit!
respectively. Also, there are bosses on each of the islands, starting with Papu Papu, who is ridiculously easy, being the only one that can be attacked in the middle of his own attack, and the only one who moons you, making you want to kill him faster. And it ends with Cortex, who, although not too difficult once you understand the mechanics, will make you die several times before defeating him. Others, like Brio, take on a more Myro-like style, where you jump in his head to defeat him, but even with that, they do it in a more creative way, eliminating his creation before attacking him directly. And if you get close enough, you can have a nice conversation with him over tea and cookies. What I like about the bosses is that they are not the same. Each one is defeated in a specific way. For example, you can't harm Ripperoo directly, and you have to blow him up with TNT. Or with Koala Kong, where you have to dodge his TNT and rocks to return the last rock he throws at you. Hey Brio, did you put the koala in the evolve array? Of course! Oh no. All the levels have something unique, whether it's the challenge itself or the setting you are in. As I mentioned, they go beyond just a jungle or a water level. They visually tell you how dangerous Cortex is and how far he has come with his plans. Or also the fact that these islands had an ancient civilization from which Burdega himself emerged. Besides, it's not just about jumping from one platform to another while killing enemies, but also about testing your reaction skills and depth perception. In general, there's a well-established difficulty curve in the game. I don't feel that there's an overly difficult level in the middle of the game game followed by an easier one, which is both good and bad, because when you get to the harder levels, you won't be unprepared. But it also means that the next levels will be much worse. Another thing that I found perfect, not only about Crash 1, but also the original trilogy, is the audio design, which is fundamental in any game. But in Crash, it's made to scratch your brain every time you perform an action. You're welcome. Every action in the game, whether it's jumping, spinning, collecting Wumpas, or even dying, is accompanied by distinct and satisfying sound effects that reinforce the actions you take and make it more fun. For example, when jumping on boxes, you not only hear the sound of breaking them, but each extra box you break has a sound that increases in tone, making this tone of bonus incredibly funny. Down, Dr. Cortex! I took out the Bobcat! Great, now just... Wait, the fuck did you just do? I got the Bobcat out. Idiot! I told you to clean the kitchen! Oh... What have you done?
What's the number for 911?
You need to get some hearing aids, man. I don't want no damn hearing braids. Each level has its own unique sound design that reflects its theme and setting. The sound effects and music are adapted to complement each environment. This means that no matter where you are in the game, you'll always have a fresh and memorable experience. Everything I mentioned adds to the game's replayability. Even if you completed it 100%, its mechanics are so easy to understand and its design so competent that it makes the perfect challenge for a boring day. And it can even be a challenge to beat it faster and faster. The best part is that every time you want to replay it, it won't take more than 3 to 4 hours to finish it without the gems. Unlike Shadow, which replaying it means beating it 200 times. But I have already talked about him, so go watch the video if you want to see how I destroy my career defending a game that everybody hates. As for Crash, the next one is Crash 2, which is my favorite game in the series, and I'll tell you why when I get back from grabbing a Coke. So hang tight, I won't take long.